Step into the world of silent shadows, where intrigue and suspense collide in tales that will keep you guessing until the very end. Here, the smallest details hold the biggest answers, and every shadow tells a story waiting to be discovered. Take a deep breath, open your mind, and join us as we unravel the mysteries that lie just beyond the light.
The Widow's Fortune, a mystery story by Grave Pit Shadows. The snowstorm raged over Barrywood Manor, draping the sprawling estate in a suffocating white veil. The manor, once alive with opulence and grandeur, now stood as a skeleton of its former self. Windows shattered, ivy clawing up its brick facade, and whispers of a cursed legacy haunting its empty halls. For 5 years, the widow of Barrywood, Angelica Houston, had lain in her grave, but the echoes of her presence and her fortune refused to rest. In the years since her death, stories of Angelica's hidden wealth grew like weeds in the village of Hartwell, whispers of gold hidden in secret vaults, jewels tucked into forgotten nooks, and priceless heirlooms buried beneath the decaying floors lured the desperate and the greedy. But Barrywood Manor was no ordinary abandoned house. The villagers said the spirits of the Houston family walked its halls, protecting their secrets and punishing the foolish who dared disturb their rest. On the night of the annual winter festival, a group of villagers, lured by drink, curiosity, and greed, decided to explore the manor. Some sought the thrill of trespassing in the legendary house. Others, like historian Michael Spice, sought something far more tangible: wealth. By midnight, their expedition had descended into chaos and bloodshed. Michael Spice was discovered dead in the grand drawing room, his skull caved in by a heavy brass candlestick. The locked doors and frost-sealed windows left no escape route for an outside assailant. As the storm howled outside, the group realized a horrifying truth. One of them was the killer, and the widow's fortune had claimed its first victim. Detective Kenya Jenkins arrived at the manor an hour later, the storm whipping her thick scarf around her face as she stepped through the rusted iron gates. Her partner, Timothy Rhodes, followed close behind, his breath fogging in the frigid air. Inside, the drawing room was a tableau of death. Michael's body lay sprawled beside the fireplace, the once vibrant rug beneath him soaked with blood. The brass candlestick, still smeared with crimson, sat discarded nearby. The grand room, with its peeling wallpaper and furniture draped in ghostly white sheets, seemed to swallow the light from their flashlights. Timothy knelt beside the body, inspecting the weapon. "Blunt force trauma," he said grimly. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. This wasn't an accident. Kenya's attention was drawn to the fireplace. Among the ash and charred wood, something caught her eye. She crouched and carefully retrieved the burnt remnants of a document. The edges were blackened, the writing barely legible, but one word stood out: will. "Michael wasn't here for treasure," Kenya said, holding up the fragments. "He was after something more specific. Angelica's will." Timothy frowned. A will that someone clearly didn't want found. Kenya nodded, her jaw tightening. "The killer's still here, and they'll do whatever it takes to keep their secret." The storm made escape impossible, trapping the group inside the manor with the detectives and with a killer. Kenya and Timothy assembled the villagers in the grand dining hall, the flickering candlelight casting distorted shadows on their anxious faces. Sonia Houston, Angelica's estranged niece, sat with her arms crossed, her sharp features etched with disdain. Bernie Epstein, a rival historian, stood by the window, his fists clenched in simmering rage. Kim Doyle, a former maid of the Houston household, clutched her coat tightly, her eyes darting nervously. Benji Holt, the locksmith, leaned against the wall, his calm demeanor masking something darker. Each of them had a reason to be at Barrywood Manor. Each of them had a reason to kill. Sonia was the first to face the detectives. Her dark eyes held no fear, only icy defiance. "My aunt promised me this estate," she said, her voice sharp. "It's mine by right. Michael had no business here." Kenya raised an eyebrow. "Michael found something," she said, holding up the charred remains of the will. "Do you know what this is?" Sonia's lip curled. "If there's a will, I haven't seen it. But it's clear Michael thought he could steal what belongs to me." "Where were you when the murder happened?" Timothy asked. "In the library," Sonia replied smoothly. "Reading. Unlike the rest of you scavengers, I have respect for the Houston legacy." Kenya's gaze lingered on Sonia. The woman's calm exterior was unnerving, as if she were playing a game no one else understood. Bernie paced the length of the room like a caged animal, his anger radiating off him in waves. "Michael was a fraud," he spat. "He built his reputation on my work, my discoveries. He deserved—" He stopped himself, clenching his fists. "Deserved what?" Kenya asked sharply. Bernie's eyes darted away. "Nothing. Forget it. I came here tonight to prove him wrong, not to kill him." "And where were you during the murder?" Timothy pressed. "In the East Wing," Bernie replied. "I wanted to see if there was anything left of value in this god-forsaken place." Kim sat trembling, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The years had not been kind to her, and her return to the manor seemed to have awakened old ghosts. "Mrs. Houston trusted me," she whispered. "She promised I'd be taken care of, but her family threw me out. I just wanted to know if she kept her word." "Did you think the will might name you?" Kenya asked. Kim hesitated, her eyes welling with tears. "I didn't know. I only came to find the truth." "Where were you when Michael was killed?" Timothy asked. "I was in the kitchen," Kim stammered. I heard something, but I didn't want to get involved." Benji's calm demeanor cracked under the detective's scrutiny. His skill as a locksmith made him an obvious suspect. "Michael asked me to open the drawing room safe," Benji admitted. "He thought the will might be inside." "And was it?" Kenya asked. "No," Benji said. "The safe was empty. Michael was furious, said someone had gotten to it first." "And where were you when he was killed?" Timothy asked. "Fixing the West Wing doors," Benji replied. "I didn't hear or see anything." The investigation took a chilling turn when Kenya discovered a hidden passage behind a bookshelf in the drawing room. The passage led to an adjacent hallway, providing the perfect route for the killer to lock the room from the outside. Clutched in Michael's hand was a locket containing a photograph of Angelica Houston and an unknown man. Kim Doyle identified the man as a former servant Angelica had loved, but was forbidden to marry. When confronted with the evidence, Kim broke down. "He was going to destroy it," she sobbed. "The will named her true heir, the man in the locket. Michael said it would ruin everything." "I couldn't let him erase her legacy." "You killed him," Kenya said coldly. "I didn't mean to," Kim cried. "I just wanted to protect her memory." As Kim was led away in handcuffs, the storm outside began to abate. The torn will, reconstructed by experts, confirmed Angelica's intent to leave her estate to the descendants of her forbidden love. Kenya and Timothy stood at the gates of the manor, watching the snow settle over the cursed estate. "Do you think this place will ever be free of its ghosts?" Timothy asked. Kenya glanced back at the darkened windows. "Some legacies are too heavy to escape, But at least now, the truth has a chance to breathe. The wind howled through the trees as they walked away, leaving Barrywood Manor and its haunted history behind. But somewhere in the shadows, the widow of Barrywood watched, her secrets finally laid bare.
The story may have ended, but the shadows linger on. Thank you for watching Silent Shadows. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Share your thoughts and theories in the comments. We're always eager to hear what you uncover. Stay tuned for more chilling tales. And as always, be careful of the secrets lurking in the dark. Step into the world of Silent Shadows, where intrigue and suspense collide in tales that will keep you guessing until the very end. Here, the smallest details hold the biggest answers, and every shadow tells a story waiting to be discovered. Take a deep breath, open your mind, and join us as we unravel the mysteries that lie just beyond the light.
A Feast of Shadows, a mystery story. By Grave Pit Shadows. Deep within the snow-laden forest, Maplewood Estate loomed like a predator, waiting in the dark. Its tall, imposing structure cast long shadows against the dark November sky, the frost-covered windows resembling watchful eyes daring anyone to enter. For generations, the Hawthorne family had gathered within its grand halls to celebrate Thanksgiving. But this year, the house seemed colder, its air heavier, as if it were holding its breath. Inside, the family assembled around a grand oak table, laden with a feast fit for royalty. A golden turkey, candied yams, spiced pies, and cranberry relish. The chandelier above cast flickering light onto the polished silverware, but no amount of opulence could mask the tension in the room. Beneath their polite words and hollow smiles, old resentment simmered like an unseen storm. Maplewood Estate had always been a house of secrets, its walls whispering tales of betrayal and greed. Tonight, the house would awaken, and by morning, 2 would be dead, 1 gravely injured, and the survivors forever scarred by the horrors they had witnessed. The evening began quietly enough. After the feast, the family retreated to the parlor for coffee and brandy, leaving the dining room in silence. Outside, the snowstorm howled, but inside, the fire crackled in the hearth, its warmth a stark contrast to the icy undercurrents among the family. Then came the scream. It pierced the stillness like a blade, freezing everyone in place. Chairs toppled as the family scrambled back to the dining room, their footsteps echoing in the hollow halls. Inside, they found a scene of unimaginable horror. Peter Hawthorne, the family patriarch, sat slumped at the head of the table, his throat slashed. Blood dripped from the wound, pooling beneath him and soaking into the once elegant tablecloth. His head was tilted back, lifeless eyes staring blankly at the chandelier above, which swayed gently, though no breeze could touch it. The heavy oak doors were locked from the inside, and the frost-covered windows were unbroken. The murder weapon was nowhere to be found. Patricia Hawthorne, Peter's second wife, staggered back, clutching her chest. "It's her," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's Eleanor. She's come back." Eleanor Hawthorne, Peter's first wife, had died tragically in the house years ago. Her death had been ruled an accident, but whispers of foul play persisted. Now, her name hung in the air like a curse. The Hawthornes were a fractured family, bound by blood, but divided by greed, jealousy, and resentment. Patricia Hawthorne, the glamorous and calculating second wife of Peter, Patricia exuded charm, but hid a ruthless ambition beneath her polished exterior. Gwen Hawthorne, Peter's daughter from his first marriage, fiercely loyal to her father, and openly hostile toward Patricia, whom she saw as a gold digger. Thomas Hawthorne, Peter's estranged brother, a man with a tarnished reputation, who had returned after years of silence, claiming to seek reconciliation. Elliot Grayson, Gwen's fiancé, a man whose charm masked a shadowy past. Harold Harry Porter, the family's loyal but embittered butler, who had served the Hawthornes for decades, but nursed a simmering resentment toward them. Margaret Maggie Kane, a distant cousin, shy and unassuming, whose presence seemed out of place in the tense gathering. Each had a reason to be at Maplewood that night. Each had a reason to want Peter dead. Detective Rachel Mills and her partner James Davenport arrived as the snowstorm intensified, sealing the estate off from the outside world. The wind howled around them as they stepped through the wrought iron gates, the crunch of snow beneath their boots, swallowed by the eerie stillness of the house. "This place feels wrong," James muttered as they entered the grand entryway, brushing snow from his coat. Rachel's sharp eyes scanned the room. "Keep your guard up. There's more going on here than just a murder." As they moved deeper into the house, a cold draft seemed to follow them, carrying with it a faint, unearthly hum. The dining room was a puzzle. The key to the locked doors was found in Peter's pocket, but a faint trail of blood led to the corner of the room, where a decorative panel sat slightly ajar. Behind it, Rachel discovered a narrow servants' passage, its walls lined with dust and cobwebs, and faint smears of blood. "This isn't just a locked room," Rachel said. "This house is full of hidden paths. The killer could have been anywhere." As they examined the scene, James flinched, his flashlight flickering. "Did you feel that?" he asked, his voice tight. "Feel what?" Rachel replied. "Cold," James whispered, "like something just walked through me." Hours later, just as the detectives began piecing together the first clues, another scream tore through the night. This time it came from upstairs. The group rushed to the gallery to find Gwen's lifeless body sprawled at the base of the grand staircase. Her neck twisted at an unnatural angle. Her eyes stared upward, frozen in terror. Clutched in her hand was a blood-stained brooch, the same brooch Eleanor Hawthorne had been buried with. "That's impossible," Patricia stammered, backing away. "She was buried with that brooch. It can't be here." As Rachel and James explored the hidden passages, the house grew more hostile. The air was stifling, and their flashlights flickered weakly in the oppressive darkness. "Stay close," Rachel warned, her voice tense. "I'm right behind you," James replied, but his tone betrayed his unease. Suddenly, the air turned icy. A faint voice whispered James's name, and before he could react, a shadowy figure lunged from the darkness, shoving him hard against the wall. James cried out as something sharp raked across his chest. He collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. Rachel spun around, her flashlight catching the briefest glimpse of a woman's face, pale, hollow-eyed, and furious, before it vanished. "James." Rachel knelt beside him, her hands pressing against the deep gashes across his chest. Blood seeped through his shirt, and his breathing was labored. She was here," James rasped. "I saw her." Rachel's jaw tightened. "You're not dying on me. Stay awake." Rachel pieced together the evidence. The hidden passages, the missing weapon, the brooch, and the house's violent manifestations. The truth was darker than she could have imagined. Years ago, Patricia and Thomas had conspired to kill Eleanor. She had discovered their affair and threatened to expose them. Together, they poisoned her and buried her secrets with her body. But Eleanor's spirit had not rested. Her rage had infected the house itself, turning it into a vessel for vengeance. Patricia and Thomas had orchestrated Peter's death, but Eleanor's ghost had intervened, locking the doors and leaving clues to reveal the truth. Gwen, who had uncovered their plot, was silenced before she could expose them. As the clock struck midnight, the house erupted in chaos. Walls trembled, furniture flew through the air, and a deafening wail echoed through the halls. Patricia and Thomas tried to flee, but the shadows themselves seemed to come alive, dragging them back. Eleanor's ghost materialized before them, her veil lifted to reveal a skeletal visage, her hollow eyes burning with fury. "You thought you could escape me," she hissed, her voice layered with unearthly whispers. "But Maplewood remembers." James, bleeding but conscious, watched in horror as Patricia and Thomas were consumed by the darkness, their screams fading into silence. By dawn, the storm had passed, and the survivors fled the estate, vowing never to return. James was rushed to a hospital, his injuries severe but survivable. As Rachel stood at the gates, she looked back at the house, its windows dark and watchful. "Some places should stay buried," she murmured. James, pale but determined, nodded. "Let's hope Maplewood lets us leave." Behind them, the house stood silent, but from its shadows, the faint sound of a woman's laughter lingered, promising that its story was far from over.
The story may have ended, but the shadows linger on. Thank you for watching Silent Shadows. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Share your thoughts and theories in the comments. We're always eager to hear what you uncover. Stay tuned for more chilling tales. And as always, be careful of the secrets lurking in the dark.